Welcome. Thank you for finding the channel. If true crime and corruption, government malfeasance, things of that nature are things that you like to talk about and hear, interesting cases, unsolved cases, things of that nature, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, and maybe comment and tell me some cases, whether it be unsolved or what have you, that you might would like to hear about. Today's case is we're going to be basically running roughshod on a case uh, that took place in Mississippi where a teenage girl was set on fire and burned alive. Her name was Jessica Chambers. This is going to be part one. We're going to cover um, not in great detail, but we're going to cover a lot of the timeline and a lot of the events surrounding her death. She was from a place called Cortland, Mississippi. Very small town. The main attraction in that town is a gas station, to give you an idea. She was suspectedly murdered by a man named Quentin Tellis. Now, what's interesting about this, if you are familiar with the case, you will know in great detail more information than what I'm going to put into this video. However, Quentin Tellis, if you are not familiar with the case, I strongly encourage you to get familiar with the case. He was tried twice for Jessica Chambers' murder. Both times he was tried, it was a hung jury. Both entire trials are on YouTube. You can feel free to view those and view all the evidence for yourself if you would like. Quentin Tellis, not illegally, it has nothing to do, it has no bearing on the Jessica Chambers case, but he is in prison in Louisiana because he is believed to have murdered another young lady who was a foreign exchange student. He was caught using a dead girl's debit card, and someone matching his description was seen around that girl's apartment. So he was acquitted, or not acquitted. He had a hung jury in both of his trials when he was tried twice for the Jessica Chambers murder, but he is serving a sentence for using a stolen debit card. They wasn't able to definitively prove him guilty in the case in Louisiana either. Nonetheless, I would encourage you, as I've said, if you haven't seen or if you're not familiar with the Jessica Chambers case, I would urge you to get familiar with it, because to me, if you're into this type of thing, it's a very intriguing case. And Jessica Chambers, a girl that lost her life senselessly, needs justice. And the person or people responsible for setting her on fire, pouring gasoline down her throat and all over her, and setting her on fire, need to be held accountable. So, in his trial, there was tons of evidence. Okay, one of the most damaging things to the case is the fact that when the first responders arrived on scene, she was still alive, severely burned. I want to say she had burns on 98% of her body. When the first responders arrived, they asked her, "Who did this to you?" And they claimed that the noise that she made, some of them claimed that they clearly heard her say this, although she would be severely in shock. And with gasoline poured down her throat and set on fire, I find it hard to believe she would be able to say anything that would be audible. But they claim that she said Eric or Derek did this to me. Well, this guy's name is Quentin Tellis. So you can see right off the bat where that would play a huge problem in front of a jury. What I want you to keep in mind is if you watch the trial, if you have watched the trials, or if you plan to watch the trials, you have to forget about the Eric or Derek. Unless you believe that you could have gasoline poured all over your body, your entire body be burned beyond repair, beyond a point where it can heal itself. Gasoline poured down your throat, your mouth, tongue, and everything. Doctors testified how burnt it was. Unless you believe that she would still be able to talk to where you can understand it, the first responders, then that might be a situation where you might be one of those people that can still find reasonable doubt in this situation. I, however, after viewing both trials and listening to all of the evidence, I have come to the conclusion that Quentin Tellis is either absolutely responsible for Jessica Chambers' death, or at a minimum, he was there and a contributor to her death. And we're going to go through some of the evidence, some of the timeline as the reason why I think this. Now, one of the most damaging pieces of evidence in both cases is the prosecution expert witness on cell phone data. To me, I think it's about 4 hours long, his presentation. To me, sums it up. Now, they looked at every single Eric and Derek in the county. When all of those came up short, they expanded the search, and they went out to the surrounding counties and the surrounding counties, and they looked into everybody. They went through every crack and crevice of her cell phone, everybody else's cell phone. I mean, literally everybody. Now, Quentin Tellis was interviewed early on, but his location data, he admitted to being with Jessica that morning. They kind of crossed him off as a suspect initially, but when his location data came in from his cell phone records late in the investigation, and Paul Rowlett, the guy you see depicted in this photograph, when he analyzed Quentin Tellis's location data later on in the investigation, he was able to put 1 and 2 together and realize that Quentin Tellis was not telling the truth. Now, we're going to go through some of his lies, and we're going to cover some of what Paul Rowlett laid out in his presentation. But I want you to keep in mind that when somebody goes missing or somebody's murdered, a lot of times the investigators, they look at the people closest to that person and the people that last saw her. This guy was with her on and off all day, and he was with her literally minutes, whether it be 60, 90 minutes, provably before she was murdered. Now, if you was in the middle of New York, the fact that you could prove that he was with her 60 to 90 minutes before she was murdered wouldn't mean as much. But in Cortland, Mississippi, the chances of her coming across somebody else in a town where murders are not that common is a different story. So I want to take you through some of this timeline. And like I said, this isn't every single piece of the timeline. I don't want to make this video so long where people would get uninterested, but I want you to understand a few things. So it skips around. You can research the timeline for yourself if you desire to, but at 10:08, it's provable that Jessica says she's going to pick up Quentin Tellis. At 10:09, Tellis texts Chambers that he's ready for her to come get him. At 10:13, now keep in mind, for those of you who do not know, Quentin Tellis, that gas station that I told you about in Cortland, Mississippi, is like the only thing in Cortland, Mississippi. It has cameras on the outside of it, and it just so happens that Quentin Tellis lives directly across the street from the gas station. So at 10:13 a.m., the surveillance video from the M&M gas station and convenience store shows Chambers pulling into Tellis's driveway. Tellis lived close enough to the gas station where his driveway was captured by the store's surveillance cameras. Interrogators claim Chambers had not yet picked up her friend Keisha. Tellis tells them that Keisha was present and that they are incorrect. At 10:14, Chambers leaves with Tellis. But at 10 a.m. approximate, Keisha Myers, Chambers' friend, Jessica Chambers' friend, testified that Chambers picked her up. Quentin Tellis was already in the car, Myers testified. They were together an hour or two. They dropped Tellis off somewhere around the store on Highway 51. Myers said Chambers was supposed to pick her up later that night to go celebrate her birthday, but never did. FBI agent Blunt testified that Tellis told him that Chambers and Myers were riding around smoking weed. In a recorded interview with local authorities, Tellis said he didn't smoke anything. The unknown time, Tellis later said in a recorded interrogation with local authorities, the last time he saw Chambers was when she asked him for $10 after lunch, which he claimed he threw into Chambers' car during daylight hours, which is captured on the video at the gas station. So at the initial interview, Quentin Tellis is saying that I only seen her, that was the last time I seen her was, sometime after lunch when she asked me for $10 and I walked over there and gave her $10 or whatever. Okay. That's going to turn out to be a lie. Early afternoon, Chambers' mother testified that Chambers returned home. The mother believes Chambers had been going out to get a pack of cigarettes. Chambers then took a nap at her home. Her mother testified to that fact. At 2:03, Tellis texts Chambers. She asked him what he wanted. He replies, "Some lovin'." Now, it is established throughout the course of the trial that Quentin Tellis wanted to have sex with Jessica Chambers. Whether or not he had already had sex with her, whether or not they did on this day later in the evening, regardless, it is established that he wanted to have sex with her. At 4:23 p.m., according to cell phone records, Tellis called Chambers at 4:23. Her mother testified the call occurred at about 5 p.m. The mother testified the call woke Chambers up. She was taking a nap. Chambers went into the bathroom, left to get something to eat with a phone against her ear, her mother testified. At 4:30 p.m., Chambers texts Tellis that she wanted to go get something to eat and that she'd go with him if he paid for it. I'm assuming that means, because I got this off of a website, I'm assuming that means Tellis, she would go get them food if he paid for it. Like, I'll fly, you buy type situation. At 4:35, Quentin texts Chambers, "Call me." 25 minutes went by. At 4:40, M&M surveillance video captured Tellis at the store. At 4:56, Chambers texts Tellis and asks, "Where you at?" 5 p.m., it's dark out. Chambers makes a few other phone calls. From 5 to 5:15, prosecutors believe Chambers left her house. 5:24 to 5:30, Eminem's surveillance video captured Jessica purchasing gasoline. Tellis is not present at the store, though he claimed he gave her money while she was there. Earlier, he claimed he gave her money while it was still light out. It was dark out by this time. 6:08 to 6:17, the Tellis Chambers cell phones ping off the same tower in Batesville near a Taco Bell. Tellis originally claimed around the middle of the investigation that he had followed Chambers to Taco Bell in a truck owned by somebody named Big Mike. He claimed the last time he saw Chambers was after leaving the Taco Bell. He went one way, she went another. Later, after his alibi fell through, Tellis admitted he rode with Chambers in her car to Taco Bell. So he lied. He said he was in Big Mike's truck, that he met her at the Taco Bell. That was a lie, because Big Mike said, hey, I don't want no part of this shit. He wasn't in my truck. And how do we know he wasn't in Big Mike's truck? Because Big Mike and a couple of his buddies drove up to Memphis, and they was at the Tennessee Titans game, or was going to the Tennessee Titan games the next day, which was verified by receipts. So strike two, you're lying again. Actually, it's like strike 3 or 4 at this point. You're lying again. If somebody keeps lying, they're lying for a reason. And you can apply that fact to almost anything in life. In another version, the state believed Tellis and Chambers were at the Taco Bell for 7 minutes, after which she returned to Cortland the same way she always did. It is unclear from testimony at this point in the trial whether the state recovered any surveillance footage from the Taco Bell. And I believe that they didn't recover surveillance footage from the Taco Bell, but Quentin Tellis admitted eventually that he was with her at 6:30, 7:30 p.m. I mean, right before 6:30. Now, Tellis claimed he was at an area called the Sandbox, which is basically a gravel pit or something where kids hang out, with Big Mike, and that Big Mike eventually dropped him off at home. This alibi fell through, as I stated before, because Big Mike was in Nashville, Tennessee at the time. Tellis eventually admitted that the Big Mike alibi was not true, and that several other previously attempted alibi witnesses were not really with him. Tellis at this point told investigators he gave Chambers money and weed at the M&M gas station, followed her in Big Mike's truck to Batesville, recited exactly what they ordered off the Taco Bell menu, and then went to the Sandbox, but said he might have been messing up his days. A lot of people believe that Quentin Tellis is not very smart. I happen to believe he is very intelligent. He is implicated in 2 murders, both of which has not yet been convicted of. Dumb people don't do that. Quentin Tellis, I believe, is guilty. I believe he's a cold, calculated individual. And I think he's a killer. At 7:42 p.m., Tellis sent a text message to Chambers. Now, this is right after she is set on fire. Tellis, after leaving her, now keep in mind the cell phone data. I don't want to make this video an hour and a half long. So that's what I'm saying. At some point, you have to research some of this for yourself. But the cell phone data shows them at the store. They shows them going up. They're both of their phones going up towards Batesville to the Taco Bell, and then it shows both of their phones coming back down towards Cortland. And then when her RTTs, her location data, switches to the site where she was set on fire, where the murder took place, both of their cell phones switched to that location together. Now, it's not pinpoint, but in that area, the cluster of dots shift to that area together. After she is set on fire, Tellis sent a text message to Chambers, honey, sorry I can't be there with you tonight. He also texts her that he can't see her because his girlfriend is coming up from Louisiana. Tellis then calls his girlfriend in Louisiana. Prosecutors believe, and I do as well, that prosecutors believe the text message was meant solely to throw off the authorities. It is unclear from the testimony where the phones of either Tellis or Chambers were located when Tellis sent Chambers this message. So they can't completely say definitively he was standing right beside her car or walking away from her car, because in Cortland, those cell phone towers are outside of the strongest points of the range of those towers. So the further you are away from those towers, the less accurate those dots are. But if you look at where all of the places to where it is known, for instance, when they're on camera at the store, and you look at those location data plots on the map, you can get a better understanding, especially if you watch Paul Rowlett's presentation throughout the trial. You can get a better understanding that the tower isn't pinpoint, but if it's putting both of y'all in a vicinity, then the chances are y'all are right there together. If both of y'all's dots are hitting a mile west of the store, then it is reasonably believed that y'all are somewhere in that area with each other, even if you aren't standing by each other. And then you calculate all of the lies that he had told and all the things he had to retract and walk back. You start to paint a picture. Now, on this channel, there'll be many times we will point out cases where the prosecutors, the judges, the investigators got it wrong, very wrong. We will point out cases where the government officials had the wrong person. But if you look into this case, I think this is one of those cases where a lot of people, law enforcement, put in a lot of time, a lot of technology, a lot of money trying to find out who set this girl on fire. And I believe this is one of those cases where they got it right. This guy was with her that morning smoking weed. This guy met with her a few more times that evening. He says he wasn't with her. Come to find out, he rode with her to Taco Bell, came back to his house, the driveway beside his house. And then from there, you could see lights pulling out of that driveway around the time where the car would be headed to the crime scene. They're still together. And then both of their location data switches in that vicinity where she was murdered. There's also other evidence surrounding the fact that when the investigators first interviewed Tellis, he, for some reason, just pointed out the fact of where he keeps his gas can at. To me, I find that something that's very familiar with a lot of murders and killers. It's almost as if they're taunting the investigators. And so far, he's got away with it. I think when he volunteered the information, hey, this is where I keep my gas can over here in the shed, I think he was taunting the investigators. Right after the crime, he claims he went and borrowed his sister's car, and on the surveillance video from the gas station, we see him pass in his sister's car, headed to Batesville to buy a green dot to send to his girlfriend from Louisiana. When he gets to Fred's in Batesville, he's done changed clothes again. He's supposedly friends with Jessica Chambers. Honey, sorry I can't be there with you tonight. He also texts her and said, I can't see you because my girlfriend's coming up. So this is somebody he supposedly cares about, that he wants to have sex with, that he likes. I mean, he might not love her. He might not be a dear friend because they hadn't known each other that long. But he obviously had an interest in her. He had her number in his phone. He had it programmed. Well, suspiciously enough, as soon as this is over, he completely deletes her name and number from his phone. when he gets to the gas station later that night, and you can clearly see these three older gentlemen talking about how big the fire was because her entire car was set on fire. He claims that after that is when he heard that it was Jessica Chambers. His story is, well, basically, well, she's dead, so I ain't no sense of me having her number and name of my phone no more. Like, come on, people. This isn't one of those situations where you really need to look at all of the evidence unbiasedly. You need to sit down and look at all the evidence. There are people, understandably, his family and friends, who believe that he is 100% innocent. But for all outsiders, if you look at this case, if you look at the evidence, if you watch the trials, I find it very hard to believe. Like I said, at a minimum, if he isn't the one that poured the gas and lit her on fire, he had, in my opinion, he had to be there with whoever did, and he knows who did, which means he is still guilty. Quentin Tellis is the one or one of the people responsible for murdering Jessica Chambers. The state doesn't always get it right. This is a situation to where if you look at the evidence, the state got it right. If you enjoyed this video today, I would very much appreciate it if you have made it to this point. If you have not looked into this case, if you have not heard of this case, I'd appreciate it if you look into it. Jessica Chambers deserves justice. I very much would appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, if you would give this video a thumbs up, and more importantly, share this video in different crime groups, whatever you want to do. I'd like to get this channel built with a base so we can interact and talk about a bunch of different crime and corruption and truth and theories.